Welcome to Career Tools. Today's topic, maintaining recruiter relationships. Hi everyone, this is Mike, and welcome back to Career Tools. Now, in today's slow economy, we don't want to need a recruiter and then discover none of them remember us. Almost no one but some very smart senior executives reach out proactively. But you can do it too. And today, we're going to tell you how. Here we go. I think a lot of folks, a lot of our listeners are sometimes slow to realize the value that recruiters have in the market for talent. We tend to kind of focus on those who we think are the gatekeepers, right?
And the folks who can hire us.
Well, managers and executives who are doing the hiring. And for many professionals, we scope too narrowly on the gatekeepers, thinking simply, quote unquote, HR.
Yeah, we focus on a company and then we think, okay, who would hire us? It's a manager there. And, I want her to hire me. Great. And then we think, okay, but we got to get through HR. And you hear that sometimes when people say, oh, yeah, Mark, well, it doesn't really matter. It was just a screening interview. And I'm really nicer than most people think. But I just want to shake them. Like, dude, if you don't get through the screening interview, you don't get the actual interview. So the screening interview is just as important in its own time as the actual thing. But yeah, people tend to focus on HR. And the fact is, recruiters, recruiting firms, executive recruiters, whether they're retained or whether they're contingency, they absolutely play a key role in keeping the overall talent market, if you will, something that 30 years ago didn't exist. But thanks to a lot of demographic changes and economic changes, there really is an understanding of the talent market. They make it much more efficient than it would be if they didn't exist.
It's not a great analogy, but very loosely, it is analogous to the stock trading world, right? They're bringing buyers and sellers
together
of talent together.
Yeah, they make a market. The people on the floor of the stock exchanges, there are firms whose job it is to make a market, to help buyers and sellers come to an agreed upon price in the middle where a buyer will pay what the seller will accept. They generally don't have that kind of impact in terms of the price. Recruiters do bring buyers and sellers together. And it just seems crazy that if a person is out of work in Seattle and is willing to move to Jacksonville, Florida, or even for that matter, Madrid, and the recruiter knows that the person will and knows about the opening that they could fill, gosh, it would be a shame if the recruiter wasn't there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So firms that know that this market exists out there, they have PR folks that go out and sell themselves to analysts, right? And the analysts then put on buy recommendations or sell recommendations. You hope buy recommendations.
Yeah.
So let's assume we all don't have personal PR folks. So if this recruiter out there is helping to make a market, how are they going to sell us if they're not aware of us?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is they're not. And to be fair, look, we did a cast a couple of years ago, how to contact a recruiter. We explained how to begin to form that relationship with a recruiter. And this is not that cast. If you've not listened to that cast, please go back and listen to it. In this cast, what we're doing is we're encouraging you to stay in touch with the recruiters you already know. Now, let this be a wake-up call to you. If you're sitting there right now listening and saying, I don't know any executive recruiters, you're at a noticeable disadvantage. You and somebody else who has roughly equivalent skills as yours could be considered for a job, but you won't be because only the recruiter knows the job exists, hypothetically. Or if, in fact, the recruiter does know it exists because they have a relationship with a hiring company, and they don't know about you, the person they do know who has a background like yours is going to be favored over you. Not because they're prejudiced against you, because they literally don't know you exist.
Okay. So before we go on with kind of our recommendations for contacting recruiters, I use the term executive recruiter. So what level does this cast apply?
It applies to everybody. Everybody. Look, everybody. Okay. One of the great things that's happened in the last 30 years with the talent market is when markets exist, firms and specialists rush in to try to reduce the friction that exists in the marketplace. And of course, they charge money for it. They economically reduce friction by charging money for it. So yeah, everybody listening to this potentially could be talking to a recruiter. Now look, if you only have a high school degree, if you're 19 years old and you're listening and you're at a fast food restaurant, if you work at McDonald's, which regardless of what people say is one of the greatest places to start a career in America, certainly. And there are similar type jobs all over the world that people look down upon nowadays, but quite frankly are a great place to start learning about how to be a professional and how to be a part of a team and so on. But for the majority of people, I would say 90% of the people who are listening to this show right now, there is somebody who does something relative to the kind of career you want that you ought to have a relationship with. You may not be their top person, but particularly if you're in a technical arena, there is somebody who specializes in your technical arena, and I'd be willing to bet specializes in your technical arena in your geographic area. There are recruiters that specialize in industries, in individual companies, in specific areas, in specific parts of the country, and people who speak certain languages. There are all kinds of combinations and permutations. So please don't turn off because you're thinking we said executive recruiter, because there are recruiters that reach down to almost all levels of all organizations.
Okay, good. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so now let's assume folks if they haven't already, they're obviously going to go back after this cast or even prior to listening to the rest of this and listen to the cast we did a couple of years ago on how to contact a recruiter.
Right.
But assuming they've done that in the past, they contact a recruiter, they had a relationship with a recruiter, they haven't spoken to them in a while, and they want to reestablish contact.
Actually, I would even say it a little bit simpler. Even if they have talked to them recently, what we're recommending is a specific way to stay in regular contact, to maintain contact with a recruiter who already knows who you are. Okay. And if you don't know, you go back and listen to the cast, you reach out, you create some relationships, and in 6 months, you start doing this after you've established a relationship. And we're making 2 major recommendations, which is what to do. And it boils down to sending an email. It's very simple cast, folks. It will be done very quickly here. And then secondly, when to do it. Simple.
All right. So let's get right into it. That's the outline. So,
right. Heck of an outline this week.
So what do we do?
Yeah. A brief tangent here, 30 seconds or a minute at the most. We try to make our recommendations as simple as we possibly can and no simpler than that. We know sometimes we go long. We try to be as short and sweet as we can. We think the more background information everybody has, the more we're all going to be able to best apply Career Tools recommendations in our particular situations. Some of us work in unusual workplaces. We have unusual work structures. We have unusual backgrounds, unusual family situations. And we feel the more you know, the more you're able to act wisely. Sometimes that means we add 5 minutes to the cast to explain, here's why this is the way it is. Because if your situation is unique, you may need to know the why to be smart enough to modify slightly our recommendations. In this case, though, it's very simple, and we can't imagine anyone not benefiting from this very straightforward recommendation, which is we recommend you send an email. We don't think we understand. We need to explain email to anybody. Everybody complains about it, so we assume, therefore, it's fairly ubiquitous. The reason we recommend email is ease of receipt. And there's a whole series of casts to be done, not all of them actionable, unfortunately, about why email is such a scourge, because it's about efficiency rather than effectiveness. But you want to send an email because it doesn't put an undue burden on the recruiter who's probably exceptionally busy, but it does break through doing nothing at all. The great thing about email, of course, is it's asynchronous. You don't have to spend time with the recruiter when they're free, which is going to be very, very hard for you and for them. Exchanging 5 voicemails with a recruiter is not fun for them or for us. Email communicates what you want them to know, allows them to read it when they can. Don't expect a reply back. This is just a way of you maintaining contact. It's a ping. That's all it is. This is a recruiting ping. And probably a voicemail would be too long. And even if it wasn't too long, it's going to require note taking because they're not going to remember it. If you're not actively involved in a search with a recruiter, you're not in their short-term memory.
Okay, so just to be clear here, you're recommending that folks send emails and they don't make phone calls.
Right. In terms of maintaining contact. Now let's say you were to do it, we talk later about when, but let's say you did it 4 times in a year, just, once a quarter you send a note. It wouldn't be wrong in the third quarter to leave a voicemail or a voicemail and an email. Hey, I sent you an email a week ago, just wanted to give you an update on where I am. It's that simple, right? It's just sending an email. But if you're sending an email and then calling 2 or 3 or 4 times, you're irritating the recruiter, and it's not necessary. All we're recommending here is sending an email on, at most, a quarterly basis.
Good. Okay.
And as we said before, look, if you don't know any recruiters, this cast is not going to mean a whole lot to you. You've got to go back and you've got to listen to our cast on contacting recruiters.
Good. Okay. So now that we know that we're going to send an email once a quarter at most, right? At most.
Right.
What do we say?
Yeah, super easy. You got 4 parts. Okay. The personal greeting. You have a little bit about your recent successes. You have a part about your near-term goals, and then you have a sign-off wishing them well. Think of this email as a little, not a lot, but a little like a handwritten note. Good notes follow a simple pattern to make it easy for the recipient to get what they need. After the salutation, which that's formal talk for the recruiter's name, you have these 4 paragraphs. And technically the last one is a paragraph, but it's really just a short sentence. And basically, because it's email, remember this, no more than 3, in a couple of cases, maybe a 4th sentence per paragraph. That's it. Don't send a long letter that happens to be in an email format and goes by email protocols. Don't attach anything.
What's that?
And don't attach anything either.
Oh, I was going to ask that. I said, well, then could we put the more details in it along?
No, they're
attachment?
not.
No.
Look, they're not going to read it. And I don't know, when people are touching base with me, they're not sending me attachments. Maybe if it's a real close friend, I get a picture or something, but don't send your recruiter pictures. And if they want your resume, look, they'll ask.
Okay, so that's what most people would think about would be, hey, should I send them an updated resume once a quarter? But no, just email. Okay.
No. Good. Okay, so let's just take them each paragraph in turn. The first is the personal greeting, right? The first paragraph of any note is really simple. 1 to 2 gracious comments that focus on them. And to make it as easy as possible, I'm gonna give you a couple of examples. And if you want to know where these examples came from, other than a couple of small changes to protect the innocent, they came right from people who sent them to me, because people think of me as a recruiter even though I'm not. And here's a little hidden gem for you in this cast. You can send this to people in your network, not everyone in your network, but some people whom you believe are not recruiters and yet have contact with a lot of potential jobs. Okay? And it's just a personal greeting. Here are 2 examples. 1, I hope this note finds you and finds you well. I hope your holiday season was wonderful. I thought I would briefly update you on my professional situation in case an opportunity arose that you felt I ought to consider. That's 1. Or, second one, best wishes in the new year. I'm sure you have plenty to do, so I just want to briefly update you, period. 2 sentences right there. Okay? So that's the personal greeting part. It's after their name. That's in the email. The next paragraph is your recent successes. After your introduction, the second paragraph is just a review of key accomplishments. I put quotes around accomplishments for now, from the previous 6 months to a year. Okay. But obviously, if you're going to be doing this every quarter, you don't want to be talking about things in a quarter. These are highlights. We're not trying to put out every single bullet on your resume. Don't send a portion of your resume copied into the note. Okay. You're not trying to get them to read your resume. You're trying to stay in touch. If you have more than 3 bullets, it's probably too many, and that works out well in terms of the number of sentences. Now, another point that's sort of subtle but worth remembering. Keep in mind, you may choose to highlight something that is not really one of your top accomplishments, but one that's either interesting in light of the economy or an industry issue or a timely trend or a timely skill that's of interest to someone. For instance, if you were on the team that successfully restructured an 1,000 employee division